Bob, I know that there's an interesting story.
Annual Doubleday, the Revolutionary War soldier.
C-H-I, wow, okay. Right up there.
Reality TV.
And the detectorists. Yes, we're forensic men now, but it's just the 1880s or whatever.
And there's still water in there.
Yeah. I'm Bob Haas. This is my good friend Chris Bergman, and we are the Westminster Cellar Hole investigators.
Hey Bob, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you, Chris?
Good. How'd the haircut go yesterday?
What do you think?
You're a fine-looking gentleman.
Thank you.
What are you reading?
I'm reading a book that my daughter Jessie wrote, Jessie Haas, about 1997. Oh God, time flies, doesn't it? About a firebug who was active in the Westminster West in 1883 and 1884. And it's quite a tale, quite a story.
Well, we're planning to get out again into the field today, and I was kind of looking at places we might want to visit on our map. I was thinking perhaps David Majors' farm, because he told us yesterday he had a discovery down there he wanted us to look at in terms of a cellar hole. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that would be a good idea, because that would tie in also to this firebug, because he burned the barn down there.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he burned a number of barns around town, and one house and one school, and quite a danger.
Well, I think then this is a perfect sort of place to go to, because one, we've got something new to look at. We've done some mapping down there before, but apparently this is something that David uncovered when he was doing something on a septic system, and it ties right into what you've been reading in terms of the sad case of the Westminster firebug.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go down there.
Alrighty.
So we milk these sheep twice a day, April through November. And all the milk goes into making cheese, which we do 4 times a week. And the sheep go back and forth from pasture to the barn 2 times a day, sometimes walking as much as half a mile or more to go back and forth, being herded by our border collies that are right outside the door over there, waiting to herd them back out to pasture.
So that's sort of their like reward for doing this, is to get the herd.
Yeah, exactly. They love to work.
In a day. Yeah.
I actually don't know the exact number.
Yeah.
About 200 sheep. every
Really?
day.
That many? And how much milk does that produce then? About? Approximately.
How much would you say? Well, how many pounds?
3 cans.
Oh, so we produce about 250 pounds of milk twice a day.
This is the 30th year we've been milking sheep.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. It's been going for a little while now.
Bob, what's the story on the Westminster firebug and the connection with the Patch Farm where we're at today?
Well, my daughter wrote a book back in 1997, Westminster West by Jesse Haas, and they had an arsonist burning houses and barns in Westminster West back in 1883, 1884. He burned a school, he burned a number of barns, he burned a barn and a house at one site. And they eventually caught him because he was a young man with a club foot and he had a special shoe, and he left a track at one of the, I believe it was the Patch Farm, which then it was the Gorham Farm barn, and they eventually caught him. He was a young man in town, by the name of Johnny Coombs.
Why do you think he started the fires?
I think kids were picking on him, and maybe it was his way of retaliating. I don't really know.
Was it like a one-room schoolhouse here then, or?
Yes, it was down on the road towards Putney.
And did he burn the schoolhouse too?
Yeah, he burned the schoolhouse.
So that's sort of like the precursor to all this stuff we see today, isn't it? It's again
Right.
another one of
Yeah.
these, history repeats itself.
Right.
I believe his dad was a Civil War veteran, isn't that
Yeah,
right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe there was some trauma there, you know,
Well,
in the
it's
family.
possible. It was, 65,
Hmm.
83, 19 years. It could have had an effect on him.
And right now we're seated next to a barn that may well have been the replacement of the barn that was burned. We don't know for sure, but that's the connection with the visit we've been making today at David Majors' farm.
What do you know about the history of the farm?
There's been a succession of owners. I know it's one of the very oldest farms in
Right.
in town, and that there's actually relatively few different owners. I think
Right,
families that have owned it. Prior to us, there was the Bump family owned it for a few years, and then there was a fellow who was thinking of developing it named Stookie, but then he had
I
taken
remember him, yeah.
he had taken over from I believe the Gorhams. Is that what happened?
I'm not sure. No, Frank Patch was in there.
Oh, Frank Patch.
And he had a
of course.
nice herd of Holstein cattle,
Right.
and I think he had chickens for hatching it. So early on, it was Ephraim Wilcox. It came from Connecticut.
Right.
About 1760. So this is one of the early. Jesse speaks in a book about they must have been pretty lonely because the only other farm in this part of town was the Holdens, and they're way down in the southwest corner, so probably 5 miles
How
from
about the
here.
Randy farm? Was that also
I think the Wilcox were here before
before
that.
Randy? Yeah.
I believe so.
There is as you know, there is an old cemetery that's off on the corner over there,
Right.
which is a Wilcox family cemetery, and
Yep.
the headstones are very, very old.
One of them.
Yeah. Okay, well, this is the family cemetery for the people that used to live on the Patch Farm back more than 200 years ago. They settled there in the 1760s. This is Lieutenant Nathaniel Doubleday, a Revolutionary War soldier, died in 1783, I think it is.
Yep, 1783.
And I think he was a cousin or brother-in-law or something of the Wilcox family.
And the Wilcox were the earliest settlers of that farm.
Yeah, they settled it in the 1760s.
So Bob, the Wilcox family, if we remember what you and David were telling us, probably inhabited that farm at a time when there were very few people living in this area.
One of the earliest settlers in Westminster West. The nearest neighbor would have been the Holden family, and they were way down in the southwest corner of town, probably 5 miles away. So. Gorham, David Gorham. I believe he was a grandson of the original Gorham, Matthias Gorham, who settled down on Hickory Ridge Road, below Bendow's.
Yeah.
And he married Jane Wilcox. So that somehow or other that it became the Gorham farm.
Yeah.
And that was like
Somewhere in
about
the later
they married about 1850. So that would have been probably the time that it turned into the Gorham farm.
Yeah, still more or less the same family, but a branch of the Wilcox
right.
family. It became the Gorham farm.
Yeah.
I know I was good friends with Dwight and Gladys Miller when they were around, and I know that the Gorhams were cousins of the Millers, the Miller farm from Dummerston, and
Right.
she remembers Dwight taking her on a date in his Model T up here to visit her cousin.
Yeah.
Back in, I don't know, 1930s, 1940s.
Probably
somewhere.
a trip.
And I was digging, trying to find a hollow place that sounded hollow, and we just came across this area here, and I took the bucket loader, and what I found was these flagstones here. Have a right here, and there are a whole set of them. This all the way across here, and then underneath. Let's see, we found a hole, between the flagstones, and then it turns out that in here,
look at that.
if you take a flashlight in here, it's a big chamber covered with flagstones, and it seems to have a. I don't think this is bright enough now, but it seems to have be square or rectangular. That is, it goes over and makes a bend. It's not an old covered well or something. It's not a circular thing. And we were trying to figure out, is it a place where they stored ice? Is it a, it wouldn't have been an outhouse because people don't make stone foundations for outhouses. Was it a root cellar? Maybe it was some kind of water thing related to water. I don't really know.
So this find here, which we've never seen before or mapped, Bob and I, is really the truest expression of some kind of cellar hole. It's completely subsurface at this point. It's not visible. If David hadn't been doing work in the area, it may never have been discovered. And at this point, all of his explanations are very plausible. But it still remains a mystery, and this is the kind of thing that's very interesting, because unless you actually know the landowner who has the most familiarity with what's on their land, a discovery like this would never be made.
And at some point, we hope to pull off, these flagstones are quite big things, and there's some roots from this tree that's just been growing and growing, but we hope to pull off a flagstone and go in and check it out. See what.
Well, that's awesome.
See what's underneath.
That'll be interesting, because sometimes in situations like this, depending on what its purpose was, historic artifacts can accumulate at the bottom of these things.
Right.
And that
sure.
might give us a clue if there's certain types of ceramics or glassware as to at least part of when this
Viking remnant.
Well, I don't know about Vikings, but anyway, historic residents of Westminster.
Ship down there. Came up East Putney Brook.
right, we don't need to go Eric Von Dine.
You have your,
Yeah, I've got the GPS up.
Oh, yeah.
And oh yeah,
you don't mind, do you?
No, I don't mind at all.
so let's do that. So I'm gonna take the point here now. So Bob, let's get the coordinates for this so we can get it on the map. We've already got some of the structural remnants on the property previously, but let's do this one because this is really quite interesting. So I'm gonna put this under here. So it's 5. It's farm behind main house. The date's the 12th, isn't it?
Right.
7/12/2018. What's the northing?
43 degrees.
43 degrees.
03.
03.
0.183.
0.183. Okay.
West 072.
West 072.
31.
31.
0.239.
239. Okay.
Elevation 613.
613 feet. Okay. Let's get a photo of it. We always like to have people in photos, David, so I think you're the designated inmate here.
Inmate? I don't know, that doesn't sound clear.
You know.
I'm not sure it's big enough
It
for
does have stripes, so.
You know, this isn't just cellar holes, it's historic archaeology, it's about looking at the past, but the ultimate expression of that is what you're doing on your farm. You're taking that information and continuing a tradition. And traditions, I think, are valuable because, you know, like you said, if it worked in the past, it can certainly work today.
How do you think it went today, Chris? I thought it was very interesting.
I did too. I'm very interested in this vault that David has exposed, and you know, maybe we can come back and look at that in more detail in the future. I think one of the things that really impressed me with the way David thinks about his farm is his use of historic knowledge of farming practices at that location in terms of water management, but also the way he's adaptively reusing buildings and even historic farming trails to manage his sheep. And I thought that was really impressive. That's an example of historic practices still living. You know, we see the historic archaeological remains. We see buildings that are no longer standing. We just see the foundations. But then there are a lot of buildings there that are historic and period. And all of these are fitting into David's thinking about how he uses the farm today. And he does so in a way that honors traditional practices because they work, but also honors good stewardship of the historic archaeological and other historic remains and standing structures that he has on his property today.
I think he is a good steward of his land. And one thing I like about it is that we have pictures of the buildings and what it looked like in the very early 1900s. And I think that's important to what we're doing.
It's a big boon, really, isn't it, for historic archaeology that you have written text, which Jessie has relied on for her books. You have deeds, historic maps, and photos that really fill in the picture of what life was like in terms of, you know, the early settlers of our town, Westminster.
Right. They were there early, 1760s.
And we saw both, you know, where they lived, and we learned a little bit about how they lived, and then we saw where they ended up on that beautiful little hill with the cemetery.
Yep. I'm Bob Haas, my friend, good friend, Chris Bergman, and we are the Westminster Cellar Hole Investigators.
will probably do the persimmon, Osage style persimmon. I will do the knutschi,
Hi, Mike.
and I will do the no. And I will do wojapi, which is berry soup. But I will do native berries, so wild lingonberries, wild blueberries, wild blackberries, wild strawberries.
Sounds good.